I'm Thomas Malone from MIT. I'm the Master of Ceremonies for our panel today on environment, governance, and action. One of the things we want to focus on in this panel is the phenomenon of global climate change and what we should do about it. Now, as many of you know, global climate change is certainly a very complex, big problem. Some people would say the most complex, or at least one of the biggest problems we face as a species today. It affects or may affect all of us. All of our actions affect it. It involves some very incompletely understood scientific issues about phenomena that are very difficult to predict precisely. And it may require a kind of coordination among countries around the world and various sectors of society within each country on a scale that has perhaps never been achieved before. So the question we'd like to tackle in our panel today is, what should we as a species do about this problem? What should governments do? What should the private sector do? And what can individuals do in their own personal behavior and in any kind of political action? So to deal with these issues, we have a very distinguished panel with us today. In just a moment, I'll introduce our keynote speaker. But before we do that, I'd like to ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves in about a minute or two each. Nancy?
Thank you. My name is Nancy Pfund, and I'm the founder and managing partner at DBL Investors in San Francisco. DBL is a double bottom line venture capital firm, and by that we mean that we pursue both the traditional bottom line of maximizing financial return, but we also have a second bottom line where we drive social, environmental, and economic progress in the regions in which we invest. And as such, we do a huge amount of clean tech investing. We're in solar, we're in wind, we're in renewable chemicals, we're in compostable packaging. We are placing big bets, electric vehicles, towards sustainability and helping small companies grow into larger companies and solve climate change problems in the process. And some of our companies include Powerlight, which was sold to SunPower, Tesla Motors, the electric vehicle company, Solar City, Bright Source Energy, Flow Design, Ecologic. We have a big portfolio, which I hope I'll be able to tell you a little bit about in our session.
Great.
Yeah, I'm Richard Robb. I teach at Columbia School of International and Public Affairs, and also have a fund as well, Christopherson Robb and Company. We developed and managed 430 megawatts of onshore wind energy in Germany and France, and then developed Thanet Offshore Wind, which is now the world's largest offshore wind farm in the Thames estuary with 300 megawatts of energy at capacity. And when the wind blows, it generates 7% of London's electricity. It's a magnificent project from a scientific and a social perspective, although it had its ups and downs from my own personal perspective. In fact, I think this was originally scheduled to be in the bar, and I thought a very appropriate place for me to be when I think about my experience with Thanet. So I bring a kind of experiential knowledge from a very basic level of seeing some of the difficulties of, and again, some of the opportunities as well. So we'll get to that in time. But let me say one more thing. Lisa, I'm just very, very happy to come to this every year. I find this really a stimulating way to spend a couple of days. So thank you for having me back.
My name is Bjorn Lomborg. I run something called the Copenhagen Consensus Center at the Copenhagen Business School. I'm probably going to be the slightly skeptical guy, not in the sense that, yes, climate change is happening. Yes, it is something we need to tackle. But we try to bring together some of the world's top economists to look at where can you get the most bang for the buck. We do that in a number of different areas. We're doing it next week on HIV in sub-Saharan Africa, so lots of other things. But we also do it for climate change. And my main concern really is that we have a tendency to focus, when we talk about climate change, on things that often make us feel good, things that are very visible, things that give us a sense of, oh, we're doing something about it, but often things that are very costly, that'll do fairly little to tackle global warming, and therefore actually neglecting the long-term real solutions that are going to fix climate change. And that's why I'm very happy to be part of this panel, because I think we'll have that conversation of what are we doing today, which is obviously not working, and what should we be doing in the future so that we can actually get good ways towards fixing climate change, but also doing so in a financially responsible way.
Great, and I'm Doug Arendt. I'm the executive director of what's called the Joint Institute for Strategic Energy Analysis. I work out of the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, but have the pleasure of working with not only colleagues there, but colleagues at 5 universities, including MIT, Stanford, and 3 Colorado research universities. And the Institute focuses very specifically on transdisciplinary or cross-disciplinary research, analytic research on energy and sustainability. And so very interested in the long-term problems and the biggest bang for the buck in terms of where we can get there. And I think probably one of the most interesting things that has come out of the early dialogues that we've had is that there is a lot of opportunity when one looks at energy solutions for sustainability rather than just energy technologies. And I'll talk a little bit about that as we go forward. So,
I'm Carl Pope. I'm the chairman of the Sierra Club, which is probably the largest grassroots NGO in the United States. For the last 6 years, we have been focusing our efforts primarily on tackling environmental problems through the lens of climate. And our most ambitious investment to date was a decision we made 5 years ago to try to prevent the United States from making what we thought was a horrendous mistake, which was the construction of a new fleet of 180 coal-fired power plants, which would have locked this country into a carbon-intensive electrical future for the next 40 years. And to be honest, somewhat to our surprise, we have so far stopped 153 of those 180 proposed plants. Only 22 are moving forward at the moment. The rest are in limbo. And we've now turned our attention to the 700 coal-fired boilers that represent America's legacy coal-fired electric fleet, half of which are more than 30 years old, half of which lack even basic public health pollution controls. And we think it does not, in fact, make sense to spend $1 billion upgrading a 50-year-old industrial facility. We would be much better off to retire that facility and replace it with something clean and new.